Did you know that this guy who can turn into a chicken has an even higher bounty than Frankie? Or that many bounties contain hidden messages in Japanese? Or that poor Chopper, who's always mistaken for the pet of the Straw Hats, actually isn't the character with the smallest bounty in all of One Piece? Because instead, that really sad title actually goes to Beppo here, the orange jumpsuit wearing polar bear from Trafalgar Law's crew. With a mere 500 berries, Beppo has a smaller bounty than any other character in One Piece, which is kind of crazy considering Beppo's 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚐𝚗𝚍 transformation in the manga. However, it does seem that since Beppo is a mink, the world government thinks he's just an actual polar bear, I guess, instead of the navigator of the Heart Pirates. And honestly, the case is very similar for the second lowest bounty as well, Tony Chopper, who the government thinks is just a Straw Hat's pet. However, after the raid on Onigashima, his bounty was actually raised to at least 1,000 berries, twice the amount of Beppo's bounty. And if the government knew the truth about Chopper and that he was actually one of the smartest members of the crew and definitely smarter than his own captain, I'm sure his bounty would be much higher. And now, while it might be a little bit hard for some of you to imagine just how much 1,000 berries is, and since berries are worth approximately the same as Japanese yen, this means that turning in Chopper right now would earn you around €6.36 or $6.91, so like not exactly a lot. But now let's make a massive leap from 1,000 to 3,200,000 berries, where we're clearly not in joke bounty territory anymore. Now this bounty belongs to Mr. 4 of Baroque Works, who you might remember as the guy who shattered all of Usopp's bones with this baseball bat. And just above him is this guy here at 3,400,000. His name is Porchimi, and we met him in Luffy's childhood flashback. This guy here worked for the pirate Blue Jam, and his bounty was fittingly low for someone who lost a fight to literally 2 children, Ace and Sabo. But what can I say? That's what you sign up for when you pick on Kid Luffy, and by pick on, I mean violently torture Kid Luffy. Oof. Now, at a respectable 5 million berries is the first pirate that we ever saw Luffy beat up in the series, Iron Mace Alvida. It's kind of wild though that this is the last confirmed bounty we have for her, because one can only speculate that it's probably going to be higher now that she's technically a Yonko crew member working under Buggy. And poor Chu, it must be sad to have the lowest bounty on the Arlong Pirates, separated here from all your crewmates with only 5,500,000 berries. But honestly, who knows what your fellow fishermen did to get that much of a higher bounty than you. And again, slightly above him at 7 million, there's a really unique occurrence. This bounty actually belongs to the Nyaban brothers, Sham and Buchi, who worked for Captain Kuro, who you might remember was the main antagonist of the Syrup Village arc where the crew recruited Usopp. And like, these two share their bounty. And as far as I can see, these brothers are the only characters in all of One Piece where 2 different characters share a single bounty between them. So I guess for all you bounty hunters out there, it's a 2-for-1 deal, or not really. Anyways, after them, it's right back over to Baroque Works with Miss Valentine, who boasts a bounty of 7,500,000 berries, and above her is Luffy's caretaker / the closest thing I guess that he had to a mother, Curly Dadan. Now this mountain bandit who raised Luffy and Ace after Garp dropped them off here in the middle of the Goa Kingdom has a quite impressive bounty of 7,800,000 berries. And shockingly, with a bounty above everyone we've seen so far, is the very first bounty that we ever saw in the whole series, and it's another mountain bandit just like Dadan, but without her heart of gold. That's right, we're talking about Higuma here, aka the guy that Shanks absolutely destroyed in chapter 1 of One Piece with the bounty of a clean 8 million berries. And exactly tight with that mountain bandit is the second best swordsman in Fishman Island, Hachan. He earned his bounty as part of the Arlong Pirates, but I do wonder if the Marines would still honor that deal now that Hachan is just a humble takoyaki salesman. However, I'm pretty sure that this next bounty has definitely been erased because it belongs to Django the Hypnotist. He had a 9 million berry bounty while he was working for the Black Cat Pirates, but now that he's switched sides to the Marines, he's officially bounty free, I hope. Who knows what Cross Guild has been up to. But still at 9 million berries, as far as we know at least, is another Arlong pirate, Kuro Obi, aka the guy with the pigtails that Sanji fought. And now already moving into the tens, at 10 million berries, we have 2 more pirates. This random guy who attacked a childhood Trafalgar Law during his flashback, and Baroque Works Mr. 5, aka Explosive Lenny Kravitz, I guess. Next, with 11 million berries, we have the heaviest member of the Don Quixote family and the one with by far the lowest bounty. And with an inexplicably higher bounty than a member of Doflamingo's crew is Gin, Don Krieg's subordinate from the Baratie arc at 12 million berries. And then jumping up another 2 million for 14 is yet another Baroque Works member, they're really all at the bottom, the mole woman here, Miss Merry Christmas. And with a strange number, 14,300,000 berries, we have Blue Jam from Luffy's childhood flashback. Then at 50 million, we have this little half-fighting fisherman freak, again from the Don Quixote family. At 60 million, we have Captain Kudo himself, the pirate who wreaked havoc on Usopp's hometown Syrup Village. With 17 million though, we have the main villain of the Baratie arc, Don Krieg. And for that exact same bounty is this super random guy who was on sale at the 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚐 auction house. Now for 20 million though, we have the highest bounty in the entire East Blue, besides Luffy of course, which is Arlong. As a former member of the Sun Pirates who was causing terror in Kokoyashi Village, no pirate was considered more dangerous in the weakest of the seas. His bounty likely would have been much higher if he hadn't been keeping a relatively low profile in the East Blue and regularly paying off the Marines there. And actually another infamous pirate with a bounty of at least 20 million is Jesus Burgess, the captain of Blackbeard's first ship. Now obviously, since Blackbeard has since then become a full-fledged Yonko, I imagine that Burgess' bounty is at least a little bit higher than 20 million, but that's the last confirmed bounty that we actually have for this character. And also two more characters who have the same amount of 20 million are actually the two Yeti Cool brothers, these really random giants from Punk Hazard. But our next character is this monkey man who loves to salvage from the Jaya arc with 23 million berries. And then at 24 we have three characters who share it, and they're three of the most random characters you could possibly think of. The Waxman Mr. 3, Big Mom's daughter Charlotte Lola, and one of One Piece's silliest villains, which is of course Foxy the Silver Fox. And just above them though, with 25 million is Mont Blanc Cricket, the descendant of Noland the Liar, who I guess earned that bounty through the terrible crime of diving in the sea, I guess? Huh. Now the captain of the fake Straw Hats when we returned to 𝙻𝚎𝚐 Archipelago after the time skip had a bounty of 26 million, which is really just sad. I mean, this fake Straw Hat couldn't even earn the amount of Luffy's very first bounty. And we also have another Baroque Works agent with Miss Golden Week, aka the painter girl who worked with Mr. 3, who had a bounty of 29 million berries. And for reference, right above that is Luffy's very first bounty in the East Blue, 30 million. I mean, just think for a second, Luffy's first bounty was higher than every character we've talked so far in this entire video before he even entered the Grand Line. And just above that, at 31 million, we have the most explosive member of Dofi's crew. At 32 is the pinnacle of friendship, Mr. 2 Bon Clay, and his former spiky ally, Miss Doublefinger, actually had a bounty of quite impressive 35 million berries. And then we have actually a couple of characters sharing 36 million. First is this other salvaging gorilla for Jaya, and at the same price we also have the Colosseum fighter Bobby Funk, as well as this very random guy who got beaten up quite badly by the Galilea shipwrights in Water 7. Then at 38 million we have this very fashionable friend of Bellamy who Doflamingo then puppeteered into a fight with his bestie. And at 40 million berries, each are the Boa Hancock sisters, Sandersonia and Marigold, both of Amazon Lily. But obviously worth more than the two sisters of the Pirate Empress at 42 million is this very random guy from Jaya. And with a price of at least 42 million though, there's the Demon Sheriff Lafitte, and just like Jesus Bird, we can only guess that this high-ranking member of Blackbeard's crew has also seen a big price hike since he became the subordinate of a Yonko, but 42 million is the last update we've seen on his bounty in the story so far. One thing for sure, he's gonna be a lot higher than this 52 million berry bounty that belongs to this random Blackbeard allied captain who attacked the Lulusia Kingdom and got completely stomped by the 4 Revolutionary Army commanders. Then at 57 million is the smaller and angrier of the two Funk brothers, Kelly, and owner of possibly the weirdest devil fruit in the entire series, the jacket fruit. Ugh. But not to be outdone, at 58 million is the most hardballed member of the Don Quixote pirates, Senor Pink. Then this pirate who we met as a slave when we were first introduced to the Celestial Dragons on 𝙬𝚐𝚐 is worth 60 million berries, and at 61 is the oldest member of Don Quixote's family, Lao Ji. Then Augur, the sniper of the Blackbeard pirates, is another Yonko commander that we can only assume has received a major bounty increase, but for now, his last last confirmed bounty is at least 64 million berries. And these two lower ranking members of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet are both also sharing a 67 million berry bounty. And honestly, at this point, we're definitely starting to see a bit of a pattern here, but Doc Q also probably has a higher bounty now. However, for now, the Death God of the Blackbeard Pirates has a bounty of at least 72 million. This super random crap hand guy who got completely wrecked by the new Fisherman Pirates was actually worth 73 million, which is kind of insane. Crocodile's second in command, 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚐𝚗𝚍, is worth 75 million for his time in the criminal organization Baroque Works, and might be worth even more now that he's a high-ranking member of the Cross Guilds. Again, another Yonko crew. And actually, let's take a minute to compare that amount to some other currencies. So 75 million yen for my Western viewers, for example, is about 518,000 US dollars or 476,000 euros. So turning 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚐𝚗 into the government could give you enough money to buy a pretty nice house in cash. Robin's mom, Nico Olvia, is worth 79 million. As we know, anyone familiar with aspects of the Void Century and the poneglyphs is definitely heavily wanted by the government. And now we're starting to get up there, but trust me, we've barely even scratched the surface of the unbelievably high bounties in One Piece. Brownbeard, objectively the worst of all the characters who are a color and a beard, is worth this very peculiar bounty amount of 80,060,000. I mean, why did the government feel like they needed to add 60,000? The world may never know. And this random rookie who joined up with the fake Straw Hats was actually worth 88 million. And Gaudi, Capone Bege's crewmate and man with a machine gun for an arm, I guess, is worth 90 million. At 92, we have this other rookie who joined the fake Straw Hats and is doing his best mummy impression. And Rockstar, one of Shanks' subordinates in the Red Hair Pirates, is actually worth 94 million. And the owner of the longest tongue in all of One Piece, Vito of the Fire Tank Pirates, has a bounty of 95 million. However, now it's finally time for some crewmates to share an equal bounty amount. After all, sharing is caring, and sharing the bounty of exactly 99 million each are the top 3 executives of the Don Quixote family: Diamante, Pika, and Trouble. These 3 crazy powerhouses are the centerpiece of Doflamingo's hold over Dressrosa, running much of the political machinery of the island, and these 3 were even responsible for taking in a young Doflamingo and grooming him into the maniacal evil that he is today. Now, that's what I call fantastic parenting. And so now finally we've already reached the benchmark of 100 million berries, a bounty shared by 2 captains of the giant warrior pirates, Dory and Broggy. Now, who knows how much higher their bounty would be if they've been pirating for the past century instead of dueling each other on Little Garden. And now that they're hanging out with their best buddy Shanks though, maybe they'll finally get a giant-sized bounty to match their, well, giant size. Also with 100 million was Straw Hat Luffy after he defeated Sir Crocodile in Alabaster. After defeating a warlord, the government really started to take him more seriously as a threat, but that would be nothing compared to his next bounty. And level 5 of Impel Down only houses prisoners with bounty over 100 million, in case you didn't know, so while we don't know their exact bounty numbers, these 3 characters here have at least that. For instance, there is this guy who joined up with Buggy after the prison break, as well as the revolutionaries Emporio Ivankov and Inazuma, who were housed in level 5 before moving on to the secret level 5 Newcomer Land. Now, the bounties are getting so high that we're getting into Yonko subordinate territory actually, because with 105,500,000 berries is one of the first Big Mom crew members that we actually met, and one of those who had actually the least impact on the story, Bobbin. And now that we've crossed the 100 million threshold, we're also starting to highlight some supernovas, starting with the one we've seen the least in the story, Mad Monk Arouge, who last time at least we checked had a 108 million berry bounty. Charlotte Mondor, another Big Mom subordinate and wielder of the Book Devil fruit, is at 120 million. Orlumbus, one of the major commanders of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet who brought his 4,300 men under Luffy's control, has a bounty of 148 million. In US dollars, that would be around $1,022,000, so turning in Orlumbus would make you an American millionaire. Sadly for Europe though, that's just gonna be around 940,000 last time we checked. But that's nothing compared to this pirate with a staggering 190 million, which it's Caribou? Oh no, not Caribou, his brother. Now, this just goes to show that bounties don't always correspond to strength, I think. Because Caribou didn't earn his high bounty from his power, but he and his brothers just love of killing Marines, I guess. And mounting into the next spot with 195 is Bellamy, the owner of the Spring fruit, who honestly I was kind of completely surprised by. I kind of forgot that he had such a high bounty. And sharing a bounty of 200 million are the ultimate Straw Hat superfan Bartolomeo and the supernova that just can't stop laughing, Killer. And just for frame of reference, that makes these two worth 10 Arlongs each. Now, 3 random characters also happen to have a bounty of 210 million that are in no way related to each other. We have Caribou, famous for being the other guy's brother, Squirt, the Judas of the Whitebeard allies, and Don Sai, another commander of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet and also known now recently as another Charlos hitter. Then X-Drake, another supernova and secret member of SWORD, has a bounty of 222 million, and since he's secretly working for the Marines though, who knows how legit that bounty actually is, but since we know that SWORD members technically have resigned from the Marines, we bet that you could make a pretty penny by bringing in this Allosaurus. Next at 230 million is Fisher Tiger, and after Fisher Tiger climbed the red line with his bare hands and freed the slaves from Erijua, we're actually surprised that his bounty doesn't hit the billion mark, but once we get to that point, you'll see just how crazy some of the pirates who have that amount there truly are. Page 1 comes in at 290, and as one of the members of the Flying Six, he's one of Kaido's top subordinates and has a bounty to match that. And only a little higher at 293 million is Morley of the Revolutionary Army. Now, obviously, a revolutionary deserves a big bounty, but she also has the distinction of being one of the few people to ever break out of Impel Down, well, before that massive breakout that Luffy did, of course. Bartholomew Kuma, the king turned revolutionary turned warlord turned cyborg turned slave, holy hell, has a bounty of 296 million. And 3 characters that share a bounty of 300 million are the first, Caesar Clown, whose evil scientist exploits and many weapons of mass destruction soundly earned that high bounty. Then the next 2 though are the 2 brothers who Caesar would absolutely not like to run into, lest he be imprisoned by Big Mom again, and that would be Charlotte Oven and Charlotte Daifuku, the triplet brothers of Katakuri, and 2 of Big Mom's strongest non-sweet commanded children. However, as you'll know, these aren't the only characters who've had a 300 million berry bounty, because this was also Luffy's bounty after the Straw Hats all-out assault on Enies Lobby, where they officially declared war against the world governments. Lindbergh, another Revolutionary Army commander, has earned a bounty of 360 million for his rebellious actions against the world government as well. And 3 characters also share the bounty amount of 320 million. The first 2 are members of the Worst Generation, first Basil Hawkins, who served under Kaido as one of his headliners, and judging by those marks on his forehead, the most literal headliner, you know what I mean. Second, we have Jewelry Bonnie, the daughter of Bartholomew Kuma, and we're sure that whatever part of Kuma is still conscious is very proud of his daughter for achieving a higher bounty than her old man. And the third pirate with a 320 million berry bounty is a former warlord, Gecko Moria. Turns out stealing and reanimating corpses is a severe crime. Who knew? And next, the 330 million berry bounties also go to 2 different pirates, the first being Peckhams, the Mink subordinate of Big Mom, and the second being another commander of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, Cavendish of the Beautiful Pirates. And actually, Don Quixote Doflamingo feels surprisingly low on this list considering how many more characters with higher bounties we have left. Of course, we have to factor in that his bounty of 340 million was frozen when he was granted warlord status, but had his bounty been able to increase, I'm sure his position as an underworld broker and arms dealer would have earned him a way higher bounty. And actually, he might just be able to call in a favor with the Celestial Dragons to keep it nice and low if he wants though, I guess. Next, at 350 million, there are 2 more supernovas, first being Cabone Beige, the #1 dad in all of One Piece, which isn't really that high of a bar to cross, honestly. And second is Scratchman Apu, who really ought to see a dentist about those weird piano teeth, I think. Now, the fact that we're just now getting into our first non-chopper Straw Hat really shows you just how infamous our crew has become now that Luffy has officially become an emperor. Because Cat Burglar Nami has a bounty of 366 million, and I'm sure that she's glad that she's on the relatively lower end of the spectrum compared to some of her crewmates. Pedro, RIP, had a bounty of 382 million before his death on Whole Cake Islands. And up next, we have 2 more Straw Hats, Soul King Brook with a bounty of 383 million, and Cyborg Frankie here, who has a bounty of 394 million. fitting for the two of the crewmates who went up against the terrifying Big Mom. I mean, what other pirate can say that they motorcycled Big Mom in the face? And Brook managed to do the impossible. He spent a night in Big Mom's bed and actually survived, even though he's already dead. Yo! And then sharing a bounty of 400 million are the hard-headed Ulti from Kaido's crew and Karasu, the Revolutionary Army commander and wielder of the Tsutsut fruit. And as you will know, 400 million was also the bounty that Luffy earned after leading an unprecedented prison break out of Impel Down and participating in the giant Marineford War. And Big Mom's eggy subordinate Baron Tamago has a bounty of 429 million, which, wow, quite impressive for this man. Another Revolutionary Army commander, Bello Betty, is worth 457 million, fitting for someone with the perfect fruit for inciting riots against the government, I'd say. And Sasaki of Kaido's Flying Six has a bounty of 472. And actually, since we're here, another member of the Flying Six, Black Maria, is worth 480 million, an amount that she shares with the former warlord and alleged son of Whitebeard, Edward Vivo. Then we have, drumroll please, the Sniper King himself, God Usopp, who is our first pirate to cross the $500 million threshold with 500 million berries. And honestly, this is kind of insane because that means that one Usopp is worth 1 million Beppos. Now, of course, this is also the number that Luffy earned after the Straw Hats dethroned Doflamingo and freed the island of Dressrosa from the corrupt warlord. Izo, one of the 9 Red Scabbards and a former commander of the Whitebeard Pirates, was actually worth 510 million before their death on Onigashima. Don Chinjao, former enemy of Garp and current ally of Luffy, is worth 542 million, which just goes to show the pointier the head, the higher the bounty goes. Who's Who, Kaido's subordinate, who was formerly a member of CP9, has a bounty of 546 million as the person who was held responsible for protecting Luffy's Devil Fruit. Little Oars Jr., a descendant of the ancient giant Oars, has a bounty of 550 million, a bounty that he actually shares with his friend Portgas the Ace. As a division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates and the son of Gold D. Roger himself, Ace definitely has earned his massive bounty. I wonder if Akainu tried to get the money from the government. Anyways, Charlotte Snack is one of the Big Mom children we still haven't met. He was one of her sweet commanders before he was defeated by the Mad Monk Arouge off screen prior to Whole Cake Islands. And one thing that we do know though about Snack is that his bounty is 600 million. And really just a little bit above that at 602 million is the Revolutionary Army Chief of Staff, the Flame Emperor Sabo. As the second in command for the biggest thorn in the world government side, it's actually no surprise that this bounty is this high. I do suspect a bit of an increase soon though, because I mean, we're considering that Sabo learned the government's greatest secret during the Reverie. Charlotte Perospero, Big Mom's eldest son, reaches a quite impressive bounty of 700 million, higher than one of the sweet commanders, even though he doesn't hold that title himself. However, not as high as the next Big Mom child on the list, which is Charlotte Cracker, who gave Even Gear 4 Luffy a tough battle on Whole Cake Island and has a bounty of 860 million. We can actually take a short break from the Charlotte family though, because we now have the Devil Child herself, Nico Robin, who has a bounty of 930 million. Being one of the only people in the world who can actually decipher the poneglyphs, Robin is one of the most dangerous individuals for the world government. Therefore, she does earn a bounty just as high as many characters who are physically much stronger than her. And then slightly just above Robin is yet another sweet commander, Charlotte Smoothie, with 932 million. But now next comes our first 1 billion berry bounty. Before meeting this character, we could hardly conceive a bounty this high, honestly, and we'd never seen anything like it in the series. With a 1 billion berry bounty is one of Kaido's all-stars, Jack the Drought. And next, Black Leg Sanji is our very first Straw Hat to break the billion, being worth 1,032 million berries. However, an earlier bounty of Sanji's is definitely interesting to look at as well, because his bounty poster after Dressrosa was worth 177 million and is the only poster in the series that we've actually seen that says only alive instead of dead or alive. And in case you don't know, this was due to the interference of the Windsmoke family, whose German kingdom is a member of the Nations of the World Government, and Windsmoke Judge wanted to keep his long-lost son alive as a political pawn to marry into the Charlotte family. Now, that didn't quite work out for him that well, and on his next bounty, Sanji returned to being wanted dead or alive. But just above him is the first billion-berry man that Luffy went head-to-head with, the future side master and strongest of the Big Mom's children, Charlotte Katakuri, with 1,057,000,000. Now, fun fact, since Luffy is heavily associated with the number 56, which can be read as Go-Mu in Japanese, Katakuri's bounty having 57 million in it was Oda's way of hinting at the Mochi's user's superiority to Luffy at the beginning of their fight. See, Oda is sneaky with those number plays. Now, the Knight of the Sea Jinbei has a bounty of 1,100,000,000 now that he's one of the most powerful commanders of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. Add to that his former status as the Shichibukai and leader of the Sun Pirates, and you get someone with a resume so crazy that he's surpassing Sanji for the third highest bounty in the Straw Hat crew. Oh, these bounties are starting to make me sweat. I have to take off my jacket. Because just above him at 1,111,000,000 is Roronoa Zoro, who handily deserves a billion-plus bounty after taking out Kaido's second-in-command king. Maybe all of those are supposed to be hinting at something, like how he's Luffy's unofficial first mate. Maybe someday he'll finally earn that title for real. We can only hope. And Queen the Plague has a bounty of 1,320,000,000. It's higher than even Sanji and Zoro's bounties, but you have to remember that the bounties aren't just power levels. They do also have to do with a pirate's threat level, both to the world government itself and society as a whole. And so while no one is gonna get food poisoning from Sanji's expertly crafted plates, Queen does have the unfortunate habit of releasing terrible diseases of his own design onto his victims, hence the nickname the Plague. Then Marco the Phoenix comes in at 1,374,000,000, who's the second former in command of the Whitebeard Pirates and is powerful enough to take on King and Queen at the same time. And honestly, I got a feeling that the world government probably wouldn't look too kindly upon the new leader of the Whitebeard Pirates after the Marineford War pretty much demolished the Marine headquarters. Really, all of this is a pretty perfect recipe for a massive bounty. However, it's not quite as massive as King the Wildfire, who has a 1,390,000,000 berry bounty, and as the last known living Lunarian and a prized government test subject who escaped from Punk Hazard, the world government has every reason in the world to want to get King back. And actually, this motivation gets even higher when you think about the fact that King seems to know a lot about the history and the legend of Joy Boy. But then next, after Whole Cake Island, where Luffy stormed a Yonko's territory to free Sanji, he actually earned a new bounty of 1,500,000,000 after being named the 5th Emperor of the Sea, his 6th bounty in the entire series. And above that, we actually have Boa Hancock, the Pirate Empress of Amazon Lily and former Warlord of the Sea, who has now a new bounty of 1,659,000,000. After the Warlord system was abolished, she was one of the former Shichibukai who achieved a huge bounty, with her dangerous devil fruit capable of turning anyone to stone and a country's worth of haki-using warriors at her disposal. She's truly a force to be reckoned with. So Crocodile is the first warlords that the Straw Hats ever fought and was their very first true test of strength in the Grand Line. And now that he's the leader of Cross Guild and actively issuing bounties on high-profile Marines from his end, he surged to the top of the government's most wanted list with a bounty of 1,965,000,000 berries. And actually, for the next place on our list, there's a bit of a tie here. For toppling the former Yonko Kaido and Big Mom, the alliance of Monkey D. Luffy, Eustace Kid, and Trafalgar Law have all earned massive bounties of 3 billion berries. Really, this just shows how seriously the government are taking the worst generation now that they've made a real name for themselves in the new world. And this is actually Luffy's current bounty, but I've got a feeling that it'll go even higher before the end of the series, which is insane because it's a whole 100 times higher than his original bounty of 30 million. And also, we have to mention at the same level Garp, who is the first Marine confirmed with a bounty from Cross Guild of also 3 billion berries, just like his grandson. But even above these four is the almighty, the fearsome Buggy the Clown. His bounty is now a staggering 3,189,000,000, very fitting for one of the 4 emperors and a prime candidate for the pirate that will claim the One Piece and become Pirate King. I mean, after failing upwards all the way from the East Blue, this former cabin boy for Roger has ascended to the top of the pirate world, and we really don't know why and how. But of course, Dracula Mihawk keeps him in check, or at least tries to, and this is the true powerhouse of the Cross Guild and the world's greatest swordsman. According to Crocodile, he was actually known as the Marine Hunter before he was named a Shichibukai, but now that the Warlord system has been dissolved, his bounty is now 3,590,000,000. And next up, we have another Yonko with Marshall D. Teach, aka Blackbeard, Blackbeard, who has a bounty of 3,996,000,000 berries. Blackbeard started his pirate career on Whitebeard's crew, achieved the status of Chichibukai, and broke some of the most terrifying prisoners out of Impel Down to join his crew. Now this would already be worth of a huge bounty, but then you add the fact that he's the only person ever known to consume 2 devil fruits, and they're 2 of the most destructive and powerful ones in the entire story. And so after he conquered the remains of Whitebeard's old territory, he established himself as an Emperor of the Sea with a massive bounty to match that. And now before we move on to the truly most unbelievably high bounties on this list though, it's gonna be time for some honorable mentions here. Because there are some characters with still unknown bounties that we're sure would be among the highest that have yet to be revealed. For instance, what was 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚐𝚗𝚍 bounty? We also don't know many members of the Blackbeard, Red Hair, or Roger Pirates bounties, and we assume that the highest bounty belongs to the world's most wanted man and Luffy's father, Monkey D. Dragon. But until we truly find out for sure, we can only speculate how crazy high those bounties truly were, because now it's time for the top 5 highest bounties in One Piece. Because at number 5, we have probably the most mysterious character in all of One Piece, Red Hair Shanks, worth 4,048,900,000 berries. The highest bounty of any living person as far as we know at the moment in the story. Now, why such a huge bounty? Well, let's look at what we do know about this enigmatic figure. He served on Roger's crew, and he stole the Sun God Nika fruit from the world government and gave it to Luffy. Moreover though, he's almost certainly connected to the Figureland family of the Celestial Dragons, having been found by Roger as an infant on God Valley. And then add his insane Conqueror Haki feats, and he's easily worth over 4 billion. Actually, I feel like he's kind of undervalued at this point. And the other original 4 emperors also all possess bounties over 4 billion. Charlotte Linlin, otherwise known as Big Mom, was worth 4,388,000,000 berries before her defeat on Onigashima. And as a former member of the Rocks Pirates and one of the Emperors of the Sea, she cemented her status as one of the strongest pirates in the world. Her soul fruit is insanely powerful and versatile, her durability is incredible, and her taste for sweets is unparalleled. But her former Rocks crew member Kaido was known as the world's strongest creature. As a young pirate, he broke free from government experimentation multiple times at Punk Hazard, and after partnering with Orochi and conquering the land of Wano, he became a Yonko and was one of the highest arms dealers in the world, even having the government itself as a client. And all of this earned him a bounty of 4,611,100,000 berries. And to keep it going, yet another Rocks crew member and the strongest man in the world was Edward Newgate, better known as Whitebeard. Now this user of the Earthquake fruit, who was even able to wage war against the full forces of the world government, even while terminally ill, had an impressive bounty of 5,046,000,000 berries. But even he can't compete with the highest known bounty in all of One Piece. With a bounty of 5,664,800,000 is the king of the pirates himself, the man who found Laugh Tale and started the golden age of piracy, Goldie Roger. Now to put that into perspective, that's about 38.5 million US dollars and around 35 million euros. It's too late to collect on it, but just imagine what you could do with that amount of money. And these bounties are insanely high, but if you want to see how crazy the Straw Hats final bounties will be at the end of the series, then you should really check out this video right here.